Chapter 9. Sheriff Borodin Hanks had paperwork to do before it was time to start for the day. He wasn't needed at the courthouse today, so once he got the paperwork done, he would be free to visit the Grem ranch. Ever since the Grem's daughter had run away and turned up on the other side of the county, halfway frozen to death, he had promised to visit them regularly and check that all was well. He was about due for another visit. This was convenient, because the water authority had reported a tanker missing, and Hanks had a guess that the Grem's neighbors were responsible. He would ride by their place discreetly on his speeder bike and see if the tanker was on their property. Maybe he'd strike up a conversation with those neighbors and, if they gave the impression of hiding something, ask to look in their shed. On the other side of the county, rumor had it that there was a town where the old swimming pool was now being used as an animal fighting pit. Hanks would stop by and see what there was to see. There was a knock on his office door. That was odd. Citizens in distress knew that each town hall had a desk they could go to at any reasonable hour to report a crime or leave a tip, if they had to do so in person. It was very unlikely that someone had mistaken his door for someone else's. His name and line of work were painted on the front. With his gun ready in its holster, Hanks walked up to the doorway and made use of the peephole to see his visitor. It was a human woman, not obviously armed, but wearing a windbreaker that might have concealed a weapon. She looked worried, which wasn't a surprise. People rarely sought Hanks unless disaster had befallen them. He opened the door, and calmly the woman said, "Good morning, sir. Are you Sheriff Hanks?" With nothing between them, Hanks got a better look at her. By her face, he would have guessed she was about 50, but now that he saw her athletic, muscular figure, he wondered if he had overestimated. She had a thin, intense face and was unusually tall, although maybe that was because she stood as straight as a smokestack. She had tied her hair into a neat bun behind her, and her outfit was so clean and well kept, which was rare in these parts, that Hanks was half surprised she hadn't put on makeup, too. "That's me," said Hanks. "Can I do something for you?" He got ready to hear about a missing animal or an abusive husband. "I wish to ask you about the crimes that occurred in your jurisdiction. You see, I'm looking for something dangerous." "You're a private investigator?" Hanks revised his guesses about her. "Sit down, please. If you think there might be a threat, I want to hear about it." They sat on opposite sides of his desk, and the woman launched straight into it. "I am not strictly a private investigator, but I'm here because I think something terrible has happened, or that it will happen soon. Has there been anything out of the ordinary in your jurisdiction?" Locals always called the county by its name and not your jurisdiction. It made sense that she was different. Her accent wasn't local either. "No, not in a very long time. You said you were suspicious that something had happened, or that it might. What gave you this suspicion?" She looked down in shame, and a red flag shot up in Hanks's mind. She knows the perpetrators, he thought. She's about to sell 'em out. "I have no concrete evidence," she said slowly, "but only a premonition." "A crackpot?" She seems too clean for that. Hanks waited for her to continue. "I was dispatched here by the Jedi Order on suspicion that a terrible tragedy would happen here. Specifically, I feel a tragedy involved in the dark side of the Force." "You're a Jedi?" he said doubtfully. The woman smiled. "Indeed." She pulled a bauble out of a pocket, held it in her palm, and then sent it floating in the air between them. With a twitch of her fingers, she sent it in gentle circles, then returned it to her hand. "Can I see that?" asked Hanks. She handed it over, and Hanks saw that the bauble was nothing more than a reflective metal ornament, with no signs of repulsors anywhere. He saw no way that display might have been faked, but still, He handed it back. Don't Jedi always carry lightsabers?
We do. Do you wish to see mine?
Show me, please. Deliberately, she stood up, parted her windbreaker, pulled what looked like a flashlight from her belt, and held it at her side, lens pointed at the ceiling. There was a fierce whoosh of energy, and in the blink of an eye, a bright blue blade extended from the tip. It hummed faintly. With another whooshing sound, the blade vanished, and the woman, the Jedi, sat back down. There you go, said Hanks, trying to mask his shock. Here I thought you were a native.
Your intuition is correct. Technically, I was born on this planet.
That did not sound right. She looked old enough to have been in the war, and the news would have been cheering her on with headlines like, Local Hero Wins Another Battle, or Yostin's Own Jedi Defeats Sith Forces. But he had never heard a peep. Her uncomfortable expression returned.
As for the premonition, whenever Jedi are struck by these visions, it is the Force trying to warn them of something. Often, either someone with whom they share a connection is in grave danger, or the dark side of the Force is active.
Which do you think it is?
I have no attachments here on this planet, or roots of any sort.
That struck Hanks as a sad thing, but she said it with such obvious pride that he wondered what messed up ideas the Jedi were teaching in that temple of theirs.
Therefore, she went on, I have to conclude that the dark side has grown strong on this planet.
If it matters you have no roots here, I take it you are the one who had the vision?
Yes, and I alone. I sincerely hope that my feelings have deceived me, and that nothing evil is afoot. But, she hesitated for a long time, my vision may have been correct after all.
What exactly would it mean that the dark side is strong here?
It means that many beings have established a connection to the dark side of the Force, and to this planet. I fear the Sith may be planning to attack Yostin.
If someone uses the dark side, does that make him Sith automatically?
The Jedi paused, as if she had never thought of this. Not all dark side adherents begin with a Sith Academy, but to my knowledge all go there eventually, unless they turn away from the dark side completely.
Hanks caught the words "to my knowledge" and made a mental note to research the Sith on his own. This was shaping up to be a busy few days. The Jedi spread her hands, palms up.
I am not a Sith hunter. In the interest of finding Sith, if indeed there are any to find, I am not sure where to begin. In this I seek your advice.
Hey lady, you're supposed to be the Force expert, not me. But instead of speaking that thought out loud, Hanks began with the obvious. Well, what do Sith do? They carry lightsabers, don't they? And they use the Force, same as you Jedi.
It is not the same, she objected. They twist the Force with techniques that are inherently malignant. They can suffocate beings from a distance, send bolts of electricity coursing through them, and even drain the life essence from them. The Jedi are forbidden to do any of these things, for any reason.
But the Sith do use the Force.
Yes, that is correct.
I suppose they use it for their rituals? When they're done worshipping, what kind of evidence do they leave behind?
The Sith worship only themselves, and the only thing they respect is raw, violent power. They have no rituals because they have no traditions. On their homeworld of Korriban, there is nothing to be found but ruins and corpses.
Corpses, huh? Hanks fingered his chin thoughtfully. Maybe corpses that were killed with lightsabers?
Of course. Any Sith who can manipulate the Force is too stubborn and proud to use a blaster.
Hanks had never heard of a Jedi using a blaster either, but he kept that to himself. Well, I'm not sure what the Sith would want with Yostin, but if you're worried, why don't you go to the Yostin Planetary Guard headquarters in Pigton's Landing, tell them what you told me, and get in touch with a strategist. They could point to a likely planet for the Sith to use as a staging ground for an attack. You can run some sweeps and see if the Sith have shacked up in any of the old smugglers' hideouts in the sector.
I will follow your advice, But first, I was hoping you might help me search for evidence of Sith activities in your jurisdiction."
"In Flatbird County?" He did not restrain a laugh. "That'll be the day. Now help me get this straight. Are you worried about Sith fixing to attack Yostin, or Sith on Yostin?"
"I am not sure which it is. I hope to gain a better understanding of what I am looking for by finding where the Sith are not."
"You picked a funny place to start. Can't imagine any Sith hiding out here."
"This was not where I began my search. I've been speaking to authorities all across the region, asking them the same questions I've asked you."
Hanks had not been notified of a Sith hunt by any of those offices. If this Jedi was telling the truth, then he should have received messages from each sheriff she spoke to. Which authorities exactly did you go to?
"I have spoken to the sheriffs of Astor County and Prairie County. The latter sheriff spoke through a voice box, although I don't know why."
Offhandedly, she added,
"Another Jedi is sweeping the eastern region."
The detail about the voice box matched Sheriff Nilix. She really did talk to them, he thought. "Did you prove to them you were a Jedi? Because neither of them contacted me like they should have. No offense, but I'd bet they wrote you off as a lunatic."
"I doubt that they had anything to tell you. None of them had any records of past crimes in their counties."
Hank stopped. "Are you serious? None of them kept their reports?" He whipped a hand at the computer tablets on his desk. "Am I the only one in the region who does his paperwork?"
"Perhaps you are," she said innocently.
Hanks palmed his forehead and grumbled. "All right, here's where we'll start. I'll send out a bulletin looking for cult activity, because if any of us find Sith, that's how we're going to classify it. In the meantime, I need an example of a lightsaber cut. I'll put out another bulletin asking if there have been any assault victims with wounds that look like it, and if there have been, we'll know it was probably a Sith. The bulletins aren't a sure thing, because apparently the other sheriffs don't keep their paperwork, but some of them have pretty good memories, so it's worth a shot." He picked up one of his tablets. "In the meantime, since I actually do my job, I have crime reports going all the way back, so I'll search through them. We'll see if there's any reports of lightsaber cuts in Flatbird County. We'll also look into anything else that matches dark side methods. You mentioned something about draining life force?"
"I did."
"I'll look into that too. It's a better bet, because if the Sith did kill anybody on Yostin, I doubt they'd be dumb enough to use their lightsabers as murder weapons. It'd be too obvious."
The Jedi lit up. "Thank you, Sheriff. This is the assistance I had been hoping for."
"And," Hanks pointed a determined finger, "we'll talk to the Planetary Guard and see about off-world staging grounds, and we'll have them send somebody there to do some kind of sweep. Now, how much do you know about the law around here?"
"Nothing, unless it resembles Galactic Republic standard law."
"It doesn't. At least, not entirely." He thought for a moment. "I was gonna deputize you as an officer of the law in Flatbird County. Around here, folks don't like outsiders interfering in their business, and I thought that might help smooth things over. How about instead you just keep that lightsaber turned off and not cause a fuss? Can you do that?" She sat up even straighter, if that was possible.
"On my honor as a Jedi Master, you can trust me."
"Great. Now the first thing you need's a dead animal."
"What?"
"For the lightsaber cut. Go to the nearest slaughterhouse, I'll give you the address, and get your hands on a carcass. Cut it with that lightsaber of yours and send it to me so I can send it to forensics. That way, we'll know what a cut looks like. Can you do that?"
"I can."
"Good." Hanks stood up. "I've got a lot to do today, but as soon as I'm finished, I'll get on the bulletins. Thank you for coming. Now what do I call you?" He held out a hand. She shook it.
"Stritt. Master Carlota Stritt."
"All right, Master Stritt." He pressed a button on his desk to display his hollow business card. "Here's how you reach me. Any questions?"
"I have none."
"In that case, I'll see you soon." He put on his riding jacket and slung his broad-brimmed hat on his back, and Stritt took the hint and saw herself out. As soon as she was gone, Hanks took out his tablet and added a few items to his to-do list. 1. Research Jedi premonitions. 2. Research the Force, especially the dark side. 3.
Research Carlota Stritt. Find out if she is a Jedi. Coming back to Yostin stirred stronger emotions in Scylla than it should have. It should have felt like coming down from a dust high, nothing more than a fading away of the thrill of adventure. But as the shuttle touched back down in Paketon's Landing, Scylla felt a sting, as though this whole planet was a person whom she had fought, lost, and come slinking back to. "Well done, Sleepless," said Nollis as she disembarked. "I look forward to hearing of your actions when you speak with Umber and I in his chambers. When we are finished, I wish to hear more of the threats you faced. You must apprise me of the tactics the Republic has fallen back on without us to keep them sharp." "Sure," said Scylla. There was a pause. "Surely, Sleepless, you have more to say than that." "Later." She turned her shoulders sideways to walk around him, then made enough distance between herself and the other Sith that she got some privacy. She pulled out her holoprojector and called an address that she knew well. Jamar appeared, seated and idle. "Hey, Scylla. Didn't expect to hear from you so soon." He looked over both shoulders. "I'm in public right now, so don't tell me anything that's private, but how'd your trip go?" "I feel strange. I want to see you. Do you have time today?" "Today?" He paused, looking down in thought. Yes. I'm coming back from work now, so come on over any time." An hour later, Scylla lounged on Jamar's couch, staring at the strips of light and inky shadows playing on the ceiling. The apartment was completely dark, except for a lantern that sat on the other side of the room. Next to it, Jamar crouched in front of an open wall panel, fighting with some mechanism underneath. "Sorry about this," he said, grunting with the effort of whatever he was doing. "I knew the power grid on this side of town is hit and miss. I really should have installed my backup generator weeks ago." He gave a rough twist with the tool in his hand. "There. That ought to bring the lights back on. Now we just need a surge of energy to get the generator going." Scylla had a mischievous thought. "A surge of energy? How strong?" He shrugged. "I don't know. Strong? Don't worry about it. There's a battery I keep in the storage locker. This won't take long, I promise." He grabbed the dormant automatic door, hauled it open with his hands, and left. Scylla watched him leave, then stood up from the couch, stretched her muscles, and regarded the newly installed generator as it sat dormant, waiting to be sparked to life. Scylla looked back at the door. Jamar had been gone for less than a minute, and she knew it took him at least 2 to access the storage locker and come back. That meant that she had enough time to do something that Sith were forbidden to do in public. She pushed the door shut. Then she aimed her hands at the recalcitrant generator, made claws with her fingers, and focused her will into a sharp point. She grinned with the thrill of the power she was about to release. If this generator would not run, she would force it to. Lightning leapt from her fingers, coursing through the air in jagged arcs and into the nodes in the wall panel. Sparks lit the room, then the circuitry blinked to life, and the lights in the room came on. Scylla ended the lightning and laughed. It was a force technique she had mastered only months ago. It pained her keeping her Sith identity and her Sith powers hidden from Jamar, but this had been a little release. The door whooshed open, and Jamar looked around with his mouth slack. "The lights are on, but I saw my neighbor's place and it's dark, so the power grid's still down." He knelt in front of the generator. "Did this thing have a battery in it already?" Scylla put on her most innocent face. "I have no idea. It just came on all by itself." He squinted at her, and for a moment she could see suspicion dawning behind his eyes. He knew that she was lying, but he had no way of knowing how. He looked back at the machinery. "Lantern's fried," he noted. "Whoops," thought Scylla. "Well, at least it works." He tapped the lantern with his foot. "I'll sell it to the junkyard tomorrow. In the meantime," he faced Scylla and rubbed his hands together. "How's life treating you?" That question brought her back to reality, back to the strange emptiness that cloyed at her. It wasn't withdrawal. The Sith's supply of stimulants had kept her feeling normal for so long that she had almost forgotten what withdrawal felt like. It was something deeper and harder to root out. Jamar watched her think. Sorry, bad question? Something is unfinished, said Scylla. What do you mean? My past. It nags at me sometimes, and I don't know how to stop it. Maybe you just need to relax. He opened a cabinet and pulled out a bottle. Kick back, have a drink. We'll go see a holodrama together. It's not that simple. Whatever it is, I can't get it out of my head. She looked at her hand and clenched it and unclenched it as if working her muscles could make her thoughts move faster. It's not that I want revenge. Something else troubles me. Good, I guess. What I want is... I don't know. Sounds like you want closure. Closure? You know, like saying goodbye. She thought on this. Want to hear what my week's been like? Jamar kept trying to pull the conversation away from the past, and eventually she let him. She drank with him and listened to him with half an ear, but her thoughts were elsewhere. Revenge, the Sith had taught her, was the key. Only by embracing her hatreds and harnessing her power could she clear the galaxy of her enemies, and finally be safe and free. There were plenty of enemies in her past who still lived. Gents and the sheriff who had struck her came readily to mind, to say nothing of the bank robbers who'd stolen everything. In her darker moods, she added her father to that list. Now that she had had 5 years of good living, she resented him that she had never had it before. His battle with addiction impressed her less than it once had. But either way, revenge did not appeal to her. Now that she was a Sith Knight, with the power of the Force at her fingertips, slaughtering them seemed beneath her, like a Jedi Master washing her own clothes. What Jamar had said about saying goodbye was a new idea to her. The Sith had never taught her anything like it. But then again, saying goodbye to those old enemies seemed just as pointless as killing them. Then it hit her. She straightened her back. I know what I have to do. Jamar looked at her. You think it's time to add the Jogan sauce already? They had been cooking a meal together, some exotic casserole dish that Jamar had been excited about for some reason, but that was not important now. Scylla turns to leave. There's something I have to do. Hey, where you going? This is important, Jamar. He arrested her with a gentle hand on her shoulder. Hey, if something's wrong, tell me. I can't. She kept walking. You're just gonna leave? Offense crept into his voice. Scylla, what? Did I offend you? Come on, don't just walk away like that. I'll be back, I promise. That promise did not mollify him. Scylla didn't entirely blame him. But he could wait, and what she was about to do had already waited long enough. Scylla did not like returning to Flatbird County. This was the place where she had been weak, abused, and taken advantage of. Her memories swelled like fresh wounds, like a burning rash that demanded she claw away the skin. But to complete the task she had set for herself, returning would be worth it. She had come to check the municipal records, and they had told her nothing useful. She had found a quiet spot outside of town, sat down, and meditated. The connection was there to be found. Her emotions roiled, but there was a reason behind it. Ideas rhymed, places echoed with personal connection, and memories of others reverberated in her mind. Her holoprojector gave a warble, and her concentration broke. She ripped the device from its pocket, silently wishing death on whoever had called her, and pressed the button to answer. What? She demanded. It was Nahus, his arms folded. Sleepless. Unless my old eyes deceive me, you appear to be absent. I seek something. You have 2 hours to return to me for instruction. No, Master. You told me these powers are mine to use as my desires dictate. My desires dictate that I find a loose end from my past and tie it up. You have no right to reveal the presence of the Sith on this planet. And I don't intend to. Do not be alarmed, Master. I have not lost my taste for instruction. But this has waited for years, and I refuse to let it wait longer. Patience is for Jedi. His eyebrows rose, and he hummed with thought. Sleepless. You are headstrong. You are reckless, and you presume dangerously upon your master's generosity. He chuckled. Scylla raised an eyebrow. Does my reaction confuse you, Sleepless? You are a Sith. It goes without saying that you are all of those things. If you were showing humility and charity, then I would worry. He shook his head, smiling. So long as you keep the Enclave secret, do what you must. Then come back to me, and some day we will yet make a master out of you. I will not disappoint you, Master, but I will not be interrupted again. Goodbye. She slammed the call shut and put the device away. She had been as polite as she could manage, but if he had the gall to call her and break her meditation again, she fully intended to destroy her projector. Not even an hour later, the thumping of heavy animal feet came drum-rolling up behind her. She ignored it, hoping it would respond in kind. Instead, the thumping ceased close behind her, and some kind of machinery thumped onto the ground, as if a herdsman had just ridden up to her and dropped a water tank at his feet. The shadow of a humanoid figure extended over the prairie grass in front of her. "Miss," said a droid voice, "I do hate to bother you, but you're on the private cattle grounds of Minos and Moara Linda. Please do clear out and find another—" Her lightsaber ignited, and with a twist of her legs, she turned and drove it through the body of the droid. She cut it neatly in half at the waist, and without thinking about it, she followed up her strike with a diagonal swipe of her opposite blade. The droid's top fell off, and plopped to the ground beside it, and its legs fell away from each other. For a moment, the remains sparked and flickered. Then they went dark. The animal that had carried the droid here stared at her with big, wild eyes, shied away, and went loping off. Scylla snuffed her blade. She sat back down and tried to calm herself to her meditative state again. For extra measure, she set her holoprojector to refuse any incoming calls. "Don't worry, Master," she murmured. "I will resume my training. After I find my mother."